This is Jim Havens. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
Calling young people back to God's design. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of St. Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Pam Stenzel. Pam Stenzel is one of the most influential voices speaking to young people about sexual integrity, authentic love, and God's design for relationships. For more than 3 decades, she has spoken to millions of students across the country, combining clarity, compassion, science, and faith in a way that resonates deeply with today's generation. Pam has the ability to speak truth without compromise while still reaching the hearts of young people. She doesn't just warn against cultural lies. She also presents a compelling, joyful vision of authentic love, marriage, and human flourishing that young people actually want. She's the founder of Enlightened Communications, enlightencom.com. She's got a big summit coming up. She's here to tell us all about it and more. Pam, welcome back to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
Hey, thanks, Jim. It's so good to be with you. And we are really excited about not only the summit, but what we see God doing in a new generation at this time. And I think whenever we call it revival, we could call it whatever we want, where you see a generation coming back to faith and really hungry for faith, it's so important that those of us who are leaders, who are in ministry, who are in our churches, our pregnancy centers, or whatever capacity that you are impacting a generation, that we're prepared for such a time as this. And that's part of the reason for the summit.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to get into it today. And yeah, a quick rundown on the summit. This is from the website, which you can go to yourself, realsummit.net. And the rundown goes like this: a generation in crisis and a call to action. Across the United States, the birth rate has fallen below replacement level, and rising generations, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are growing up in a culture increasingly detached from marriage, family, and faith. As cohabitation replaces covenant marriage, identity confusion escalates, and digital influences overshadow the guidance of parents, churches, and schools, young people are experiencing unprecedented levels of loneliness, depression, and disordered relationships. Without intentional intervention, we risk losing a generation that no longer believes life, marriage, or fertility are sacred and good. The Real Summit is Enlightened Communications' bold response, a 2-day faith-based equipping event launching January 29th and 30th in Tampa Bay, bringing together leaders from pregnancy centers, churches, and campus ministries. The summit provides biblical, scientific, and practical tools to confront cultural lies about sex, family, and identity. Attendees will be equipped to restore truth, compassion, and clarity in their communities, calling a generation back to God's design for sex, marriage, and family, and offering hope before crisis hits. realsummit.net. All right, Pam, as we get into the Real Summit, maybe we can start with, who this is directed to. It seems that this would be helpful to pretty much anybody. You mentioned various leaders in the culture and communities. I would think every parent is a leader in this sense. Is this for any parent to attend, anyone to attend, or is there really a specific group that you're trying to target here? Who should attend and why?
Well, certainly parents are welcome and encouraged to attend, and we'd love to have them there. We really are looking for leaders, people who are having influence in whatever sphere they are in, whether it's obviously the home, but whether it's the church, whether it's youth ministers, whether it's campus ministries like I was thinking a group of our Gator Catholics are coming, some of Focus are coming, and leaders in pregnancy centers who are kind of responsible for community outreach as well. And really this kind of evolved, Jim, out of the fact that I go every year and am presenting, or at least tabling at the big pregnancy resource center conferences, Heartbeat and Karen are kind of big conglomerate organizations that oversee pregnancy centers with my work with Bright Course. And, I've been equipping and working with pregnancy centers across the country for a long time. And about 20 years ago, we really had, as pregnancy centers, we really had amazing ins into reaching our community, both the faith-based as well as the public school community, to impact them and to reach out to the generation. And part of it came from this desire to not be so reactive all the time, So I used to say to youth ministers back in the day, I'd much rather see your kids at church or at Life Teen or at confirmation than have to see them in my pregnancy clinic the next day. And back in the day, these youth ministers would always say to me, well, Pam, not our kids that go to church. Our kids that go to church, they're all fine. You need to reach those kids out there, like the public schools. And the reality is, even, back in the early 90s, Jim, it wasn't just those kids out there. It was our kids. And we weren't doing an effective job of speaking about God's design and truth and marriage and all of those things even then. And so we really did start to do a pretty decent job of impacting our culture and purposefully doing it. And I think things started to kind of fade and slow down. I don't know why it kind of waxes and wanes in the world, but it seemed like even leading up to COVID, people were getting tired, I think, of fighting the culture and fighting all of the influences of cultural pressure when it came to homosexual relationships and marriage, as well as the transgender and all of that. And it got very political. And so we kind of, rather than talking about how we could keep influencing and how we could stay in, we kind of backed away. And I was approached, and then COVID came, Jim, and just set things upside down. And I think we kind of woke up and said, do we have, as a culture, as a faith-based, as pro-life pregnancy centers, do we have any say in the public square and in the school systems and all of those areas? And some of the leaders came to me recently and they said, Pam, it seems like we don't even talk about it anymore. Not at our conferences. The pregnancy centers have kind of circled the wagons, and I think churches tended to do that as well. Just kind of circle the wagons, take care of us on our own. And then a lot of them, Jim, decide not to even address the issue because they don't want, it's the same reasons we get for, priests and others, leaders in churches saying, well, I don't want to talk about abortion because someone in my congregation might feel bad or I might offend someone. And we really kind of lost about a decade. We went and lost a generation. And I think what happened, I believe what we saw happen with the assassination of Charlie Kirk was we saw just an absolute earthquake among that Gen Z, especially that college age 20-something age group. And, I had produced prior to September, we actually released it on our Bright Course platform this summer, some lessons, I would call it an educational series for use in churches and in pregnancy centers called Raise Your Sex IQ with Dr. Joe Malone, who we call the sexual integrity scientist. He's an amazing a former professor and has done so much teaching on women's sexual wellness, even in the faith setting. And we created this course specifically for the 20-somethings that have embraced this culture of marriage doesn't matter and just living together and either delaying having children or deciding to never have children. They had a whole thing on the internet called DINKs. They called double income, no kids, and really glorifying this life of selfishness that you just do whatever feels good to you and you just stay in relationships whenever it's meeting your needs. And as soon as it's not, you just abandon it. Children are not a blessing. They're a curse. They cost money. They take my time. I'm not able to go on all the vacations I want to go to. I don't have the freedom. I don't have the money. And so we really felt like we had to address this cancer really that was kind of raising up in a generation. And so we were doing that work prior. But what we saw, the message that Charlie Kirk, and many like him, by the way, I happen to be a giant fan of Matt Walsh. He's kind of a hero of mine. And he's been saying this so clearly from his platform. Get married, have kids. These things are what really matters. When you get to the end of your life and your legacy, what will have mattered? The vacations you took, or the cars you drove, or the money you accumulated. If you haven't cared about the most important things, and we know, number one, the most important thing is your faith and your relationship with God. But family is the most important. Marriage that lasts and meaningful, and obviously having children and really wanting for a generation to see children as that blessing. And what we have seen this fall is that Gen Z is listening and hearing. And I hope those of you who are listening to this podcast, pay attention and see, do you realize that we have had a massive influx of Gen Z, and interesting enough, Jim, primarily young men fly back to church. They're coming home. They're hungry. They want to be involved. And if we as a church, if we are not prepared to receive, embrace, and come alongside this new generation who wants to be back in their faith system, to be back connected with church community, if we're not taking advantage of that, we are missing a huge opportunity right now.
Yeah, phenomenal. Pam Stenzel is with us, and she's going to be with us for the entire show today, so stay tuned. And really, the message to young people, be open to discern your vocation, but you've got a vocation, right? You've got a definitive vocation. You're either called for men, the priesthood, or for every man or woman, religious life is a possibility. A consecrated single is kind of a rare call, or marriage, which is the kind of the normal call that most people are called to. Marriage, and that entails the openness to children. That is a vital part of entering into marriage with your spouse, right? And so we can't control whether we have children, but we're open to it, and we hope for it, right? And that fruitfulness is a good thing and a blessing. How have we lost this vision that should just be normal and should be handed on very naturally? We got to get it back. We'll be right back with Pam. Stay tuned.
iCatholic Mobile is a proud sponsor of the Station of the Cross. What if your phone bill did more than just connect calls? What if it connected souls? With iCatholic Mobile, every text, every call, and every gig of data supports the Station of the Cross, keeping Catholic programming on the air. Nationwide 5G, unlimited talk and text, reliable data, and free roaming in Canada and Mexico, all on a network that puts faith first. More info at iCatholicMobile.com.
Hear what our listeners are saying about the regularly updated iCatholic Radio mobile app.
iCatholic Radio is the most truthful and important site that any of us could ever listen to today. We get the truth. We get good people telling us what is going on in the world. Thank you so much. It's a gift from God.
Download the free iCatholic Radio mobile app today on your Android or Apple mobile device.
Please join us in a prayer to our guardian angel. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O holy guardian angel, take care of our soul and body. Enlighten our mind that we may know the Lord better and love him with all our heart. Help us in our prayers so that we may not give in to distractions. Assist us with your advice so that we may see the good and carry it out with generosity. Defend us from the insidious snares of the enemy and sustain us in temptations that we may always be victorious. Remedy our coldness in our worship of the Lord. Cease not to protect us until you have brought us into paradise, where we will praise our good God together for all eternity. Amen.
Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Pam Stenzel, talking to us, sharing with us about the Real Summit that Enlightened Communications has coming up January 29th and 30th in Tampa Bay. realsummit.net to learn more. We're going to get right back to it in a moment and see if Pam can equip us some as we go today. But first, I do want to mention that if you are buying or selling a home, an easy way to help the Station of the Cross at the same time is Real Estate for Life. They have 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the U.S. and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered, experienced realtor near you. And don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross. All right, back to the Real Summit. So this is to equip leaders, church leaders, campus ministry leaders, leaders from pregnancy centers, anybody in an influential role that works with young people. Certainly, this summit is for you, and this is an equipping summit here. So being equipped, it says, to restore truth, compassion, and clarity in their communities, calling a generation back to God's design for sex, marriage, and family, and offering hope before the crisis hits. So many of us aren't going to be able to make the summit, as we are not in those roles, or maybe, if we are, perhaps we can't make it. If you can make it, definitely be open to joining this summit, realsummit.net, coming up later this month. But if not, we want to get equipped as much as we possibly can here today with you, Pam. So what more can you share with us? Give us a little preview.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I'm really excited about, Jim, one of our themes is really talking to fathers and young men and to calling them into leadership roles. And just your work with the Men's March really is inspiring. And I think as we've traveled with the Men's March and we've called young men to stand up and to be leaders, it's almost antithetical to what the culture is telling these boys. You don't have a voice and don't say anything and no uterus, no opinion. And we've really belittled men, and it really has affected this generation of young men. And there's some things that we know that, first of all, God designed men to be leaders and protectors and guardians of their families. And when we call men to those things, and we call them to be men of God and men of character and men of integrity, we end up building really strong families and again, strong fathers. Fathers matter. And a lot of the ills that we're seeing in society and our culture and all of the struggles are coming because so many children are growing up without a father. And part of our big call, and I'm really excited, Pastor Amos Gray has worked in inner city ministries and a lot of ministry with the minority and underserved communities, calling young men back to the family, calling young men to marriage and fatherhood and making that influence. And I was talking to Pastor Gray just this week, and we were talking about this phenomena that we're seeing these young men flocking back to their faith, actually more than even the young women. And the other thing that was really interesting in the surveys that we're seeing is that young men, Gen Z men, which would be the 18 to 30-year-old crowd, are more apt to say they desire marriage and want marriage than are the young women. And the I don't know if it's flipped a little bit. It's this generation of young men. So we need to speak clearly to them. There's a stat that has held true for over probably 60 years since we've been following it, that if the father in the family, Jim, attends Mass, attends church, is involved in his faith, and is leading in faith formation with his children, if the father is the one, not over 90% of those children will remain faithful and keep faith as they enter into adulthood. It is not the same if dad's at home and not attending Mass and not participating in faith activity with the family, and it's just the mother. And the reality is that father's presence and that father's spiritual headship matters, and it matters for the next generation. And so we really want to call young men and really equip young men and come around this generation of young men. And we were talking about the fact that these young men, everybody has their role models, the people, the celebrities, whatever they look up to. And Jim, I'm a big football fan, and I've watched. I was around during the Tim Tebow days, and Philip Rivers days when they were mocked because of their faith, and they were mocked because they're still kind of mocking Philip Rivers when he comes back and he's a grandpa and has, what does he have, 10 kids now? I'm not sure. Bless him. I love him to death, but and even a little bit with Harrison Butker, the kicker from Kansas City, who came out and spoke boldly about his faith and how marriage was important and leadership role as a Catholic man. And it was unheard of. They're usually mocked from here to kingdom come. But recently, I don't know if you've all watched, there's been a shift in culture. And we're seeing these football players being bold about their faith, some of them getting baptized, some of them coming strong out about their commitment to faith and family. And they're not being mocked and they're not being laughed at. And the culture is looking. And Pastor Amos and I were talking, and I said, the difference between having Harrison Butker or C.J. Stroud or even Bucky Irving, who was recently baptized here in Tampa Bay, having those kind of guys to look up to compared to the coaches at Michigan football who destroyed their lives and their career by not taking care of their family and their sexual integrity and taking care of all that they've been given and having really bad decisions kind of ruin their life, as it were. And I look at that with Stefan Diggs too. So it's one of these things where we have to say, look at guys, girls, you've got an option here. You can follow God's design for you. You can honor him in the choices you make. And there is beauty and success and blessing at the end of that. Or you can listen to the culture and throw away everything that God's commanded of you. And you're going to end up with a lot of pain. There's death at the end of that road. And it's really important that we consistently share with the new generation that following God's design is what brings lasting fulfillment, joy, blessing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, it should be obvious. It should be common sense. And yet we're in a time where we've lost this. And it's been completely flipped. And now, everything else is being promoted. But you mentioned the hope. God's grace is always going to be breaking in somewhere. And so, what more are you seeing, I guess, here that, or in terms of how you can equip us to tap in to that hope that you see, even in the middle of this cultural confusion?
Yeah, I think we have to have these important conversations and not be afraid to say, the world, or maybe a generation even apologize, Jim. My generation came out of the late 70s and 80s where we kind of ignored and we kind of thought we could do whatever we wanted and there would be no consequences to our marriage and family. And we need to apologize to this new generation and say, hey, you know what? We were wrong. And whatever way we strayed from God's design, we need to come back to what we know is true and what God has planned for us. And here's the thing I think that the younger generation needs to understand, and it's really been kind of a call that I've given for decades, is that yes, there's forgiveness and yes, there's healing. And you can wake up at 35 years old and realize you made a lot of mistakes. But the problem is, if you don't get this right younger, you're going to experience the consequences that might mean you will never be able to enjoy those things. And I was thinking about the reality that these students that embraced the culture and said marriage doesn't matter and the hookup culture and sleep around and ended up contracepting and using birth control for a good decade of their lives and putting off having children, putting off marriage. And then all of a sudden at 35, 36, they're thinking, wait a minute, this isn't really empty. I want to get married. Actually, maybe I do want kids. And then all of a sudden they find out that they can't have sustaining relationships where faithfulness and integrity are the center of it. And because of a lot of especially for the young women, the decisions that they made, they're experiencing massive infertility. And then what happens is they turn to IVF. And without getting too heavy into this, I am just so appalled by the way that some in our culture, even in our faith communities, have just embraced IVF and said to us, Jim, well, aren't we grateful? Kids are great. Don't we want them to have children? But the reality is, because of all these poor choices they made for the better part of a decade or two, for a lot of them, the reason they are experiencing this infertility is a result of that. And so now we're supposed to help you make 10 children so that you can maybe have one survive and just discard the other 9 children that you try to create just to make you feel better about your ability to conceive. And it's like, again, children become a commodity, whether they're preborn or born, and we just throw the others aside. And I'm like, this is a result of a lot of this could have been solved, Jim, if they would have embraced God's design for sexuality, for their body, for their respected their fertility and respected marriage and having children. And so one of the great things we're going to be talking about, Guiding Star Tampa is coming, and they're going to be doing a whole session on reframing women's health and talking about body literacy and talking about teaching young women to just be in awe and wonder of the design of their body, the way God made them, the way God created them specifically to be able to conceive and carry children, and what a beautiful gift that is. And we really believe that when young women look at their fertility as a beautiful gift from God and not as some kind of disease to be dealt with the way Planned Parenthood and the culture has told them with birth control and abortion and all that comes with that, when we can get them to embrace it and see how beautiful God designed them, and that God designed them to have children within a marriage where they were protected and loved and honored and healthy. And this is how all of these themes intersect, and you can kind of see how that happens, that the life issue, that honoring the preborn, honoring each individual designed in the image of God, and the fact that we were designed male and female, and that God has a purpose and a plan. All of these things bring us to life-affirming choices that will help us live God's design the way He intended.
It's pretty amazing how, when you really look at it, if you were to stack it up, all right, if you follow God's way on this, on human sexuality, look at all of the great consequences that come from this. If you go the other way and you're unfaithful to God's commands on human sexuality, look at the negative consequences that occur. I mean, you just stack them up against each other, and it is so crystal clear, and yet we still have a culture that is directing everybody down the wrong road as if it's the other way around. And the church is going along with it. We're about to hit the break here, but when we get back, I want to ask Pam to give us some more, provide more for us on how church leaders can step into this. All right, what is it that church leaders can actually do that they're not doing? And we certainly know that they need to talk about it. That's the obvious thing that Pam has already mentioned. You can't just be silent about it, because the culture is telling the lie. And then people are only hearing the lie. Young people are only hearing the lie, and they're being presented the lie as if it were true. And it's tapping into their concupiscence and various inclinations that seem very attractive. And so then they're going with the lie. They're going down the wrong road with no one presenting them the truth of the matter and stacking it up clearly for them and helping them to see it clearly and say, this is obvious. Come on, you want to go this way. Can't you see that? And just making it clear to them, giving them the dignity to have the freedom to actually see it and make that choice. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
Atheists claim theists are essentially no different than atheists because we reject gods too, such as Greek and Roman gods. But this is plain absurdity. What's our reason? First, it's an abuse of language. A theist believes in at least one God. An atheist doesn't believe in any God. They're mutually exclusive terms. To say a theist is an atheist to most gods is like saying a married man is a bachelor to most women. Second, it's bad reasoning. To say I'm an atheist because I reject some gods is like saying I'm an anarchist, one who rejects all forms of government because I reject communism and fascism, some forms of government. But that's silly. So the claim that atheists and theists are no different doesn't hold water. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
This is a segment about small Catholic innovations that made a huge impact from the OSV Institute for Catholic Innovation. There's another saint besides St. Nicholas that shaped Christmas as we know it. St. Boniface was an 8th century bishop sent to catechize German pagans. One of their winter traditions was to decorate an oak tree and perform a pagan ritual around it. Boniface did not approve. He chopped down the oak tree in one fell swoop. Behind the fallen oak was an evergreen. St. Boniface decided to preach about Jesus' gift of eternal life. The Germans were amazed. Maybe by this jack bishop who chopped down a huge tree in one go, but mostly by Jesus. They put decorated evergreens in their homes to celebrate the birth of Jesus, so you can thank Catholic innovation for Christmas trees. Learn more about what OSV Institute is doing to inspire and encourage Catholic innovation at osvinstitute.com.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Pam Stenzel. She is founder of Enlightened Communications, enlightencom.com. Also executive producer for Bright Course, provides training and education for pregnancy centers worldwide, especially in the U.S. and Canada, brightcourse.com. And consultant for Community Pregnancy Clinics, the largest network of pregnancy resource clinics in the state of Florida. Support CPCI.com. But Pam's here today mostly to share with us about the Real Summit that is coming up in Tampa, January 29th through 30th, to equip leaders to be able to proclaim the truth, REAL being an acronym for relationships, education, and authentic love. And boy, do we need people to proclaim the truth in this area and help form young people in this area. So Pam, for church leaders, and by the way, realsummit.net, that's where you can go to learn more about the summit, especially if you sense a call to attend, all the information there to figure out how to register and be a part of this summit. But Pam, church leaders, what would you propose to church leaders in terms of what they can practically do to have a greater impact in this area?
Yeah, one of my big pushes last year, or themes that we had at Bright Course, which is our educational platform for pregnancy centers, was to go to our pregnancy centers. We have 2,800 pregnancy centers all across the United States that utilize our platform and that we influence and give these resources to. And we met together as a staff and said, for years, the pregnancy centers have gone to the church with their hands empty. And a lot of nonprofits do this, Jim. They kind of go to the church going, please help us, support us, give us money, help give us volunteers, give us diapers and baby clothes and all these things. And I said, what if we flip this and said, why aren't we going to the church and saying, how can we serve you? What can we provide for you and your religious education, your RE director, your youth ministers, your staff, and how can we pray for you? Because Jim, we believe that Jesus Christ founded a church, not a pregnancy center, and that the church is paramount. The church is the most important. And we have resources along these lines that I know our pregnancy centers are ready, willing, and want to give to the church to use. So some of the things I talked about, like reframing women's health and CycleWise, we've created an entire lesson series called CycleWise. And I envisioned churches having maybe the youth leaders or the RE directors say, let's get moms and teenage daughters together and let's have a day, a Saturday, or maybe a little weekend retreat and teach this material, the CycleWise, and help them come around their young women and help them appreciate their bodies and the way God created them. And we could do that. All of the other, we have my love lessons is on there, which is my talks to teenagers about sexual integrity and really making good choices. We have the whole sex talk for parents. Jim, we even have a series for parents about, it's called Parenting Through Gender Confusion, but some really solid, important faith-based truth given to parents who might have a child who's struggling with identity, sexual identity, and trans, and all of those gender issues. And these are resources that we have that maybe the church doesn't have. We have them for free for you to use and utilize. The Raise Your Sex IQ, maybe with your college group. But what I would say to church leaders is you need to be talking about this. I am so tired of hearing from ministry, whether that's high school or middle school, high school, college, that are like, oh, well, we talked about sex once, or we brought Jason Everett in for 4 years ago, and now we've covered this. You haven't covered it. This has to be talked about regularly, consistently. I mean, TikTok and YouTube is going to talk about sex and hookup culture tomorrow, even though they have brought up the subject yesterday. And yet in our churches and in our leadership, we're like, no, we already handled that. We talked about that. Or the other thing, Jim, that frustrates me to no end is they'll be like, well, the parents are responsible to do that. I agree. And let me just tell you, I firmly am behind that. The primary educator of children is not the churches. It's certainly not the schools. It is 100% the parents. They're the ones who have been given the command by God to teach this law, teach God's design, teach God's standards to their children when they get up in the morning, when they walk in the way, and when they go to bed at night. And I used to tell parents, if your teenager hasn't recently looked at you and done the, oh, Mom, you've told me a million times, you're not talking enough. You need to be having these discussions. But Jim, we as a church and as leadership, we can come alongside parents and educate them and give them the tools that they need to be the voice of truth and faith and God's design to their children. Be the resource. Don't just leave them out there in an island and say, well, that's your job to talk about these issues. Let's get the parents together and equip them and encourage them and make sure we give opportunities for them. One of the things I love to do when I would go into parishes is to say, yeah, I'm really excited to speak to your high schoolers, but you know what I want? I want their parents there. I don't want just them there. And sometimes the youth ministers were like, parents don't usually come to our, teens. I said, I don't care what they usually come to. I want the parents there for this discussion, because we need to open up this discussion about healthy sexuality and God's design for marriage and family and sex. We need to have it in front of the parents. And, so many of the parents that would come, Jim, would say to me, I wasn't really sure I wanted to go. I went, whatever. But I learned so much. And now I feel like I have the tools to continue this conversation with my student. And so if we're not providing those opportunities for the parents of the students that we're ministering to, then how are we expecting them to do the job God's called them to do? And that is to impact their own children in the home.
Yeah, I've certainly observed that to be true, that, a lot of the times the parents have not been equipped, never received it from their parents. And so what do we do now if we have generations that have lost this vision for human sexuality, sexual integrity, the way, just the way of self-gift in relationships, what marriage really is and what it's about. And so if we've lost this amazing vision that God has handed on to us through his church, then it seems to me that that's a very important role for the church to make sure that they are directly stepping in and helping those parents who never got the message to get it now. And I remember, an experience with one man outside of an abortion killing center that I talked to one time, and he was still probably a middle-aged man, probably on the younger side of middle age, I would say, and we had a great conversation outside of there, and he said basically like, I was talking to him about sexual integrity, and he's like, I never got any of this. And he's like, but give me that material. He took the pamphlets I had. Can I have more of those? Because he said he wanted to give those to his children. So, I mean, you're going to find people that are open if you're sharing it. Not everybody's going to be open. Some people are going to be stubborn, indignant. They're hard-hearted. They don't want to hear it, but that's not up to us. We have to, though, do our best to hand it on. And that is the role of the church. And you are going to find people people that are open and receive this good news with joy and see great fruits where they're going to want to hand this on to their children. What a blessing. What a blessing you have done for that family. And if we don't step up, that doesn't happen. So yeah, I guess maybe that, can you speak to that side of it, Pam? What about a church leader who maybe could come to this summit, the realsummit.net, it's happening in Tampa, January 29th and 30th. They could come to this summit, but then, and maybe even they're having a good prompting from the Holy Spirit to say, yes, go to the summit, and they refuse and don't accept any way to do anything different than what they've been doing. What is the cost to our communities if church leaders just keep going in the direction they're going and don't do what they need to do to change and really have that impact?
You know, the truth, Jim, is this, that the church is going to begin to die. The children that are being raised in homes where parents just dump the kid off maybe at confirmation and never are involved in faith formation with their own children and their own family. Those are the kids that I saw at University of Florida on a consistent basis at my pregnancy center, who were like, one girl was making all kinds of wrong choices, and I was counseling with her about an STD infection that she had, and she made a comment to me that maybe she would like to make better decisions, but she didn't know anyone in her circle of friends who were making right decisions. And I began to explore that more. And I asked her, I said, were you raised up in church? She says, yeah, I was raised up Catholic. And I said, are you connected to your faith and your church here in Gainesville at university? And she said, oh, absolutely not. No, the minute she left wherever she grew up, she was done with church, wasn't going. And I said, can I make a suggestion that until you replug yourself back into that faith community, you will never have an opportunity to surround yourself with young people and friends and a community that embraces God's design for marriage and family and maybe your desire to change the decisions you're making. And that's just a small example of the reality that when our kids separate themselves from the faith community, then when they reach adulthood or certainly college and beyond, they leave and they're gone. And what are the chances that we're ever going to get them back? And it's devastating. And so the reality is we want our kids to not only grow up in the faith and with faith formation, but we want them to remain so that they raise their families and their children in the faith, and that this is passed down to generations. It's that blessing to generations. I used to say that about a lot of what we do in the pregnancy center movement. We're literally impacting generations, but we can't impact generations if we don't impact that mother and that father in that moment to not only choose life for that child, but then to create a healthy marriage and family and a great place to raise children. The reality is that is discipleship. That is the job of the church. And what God's called our shepherds to do is to shepherd the flock and to come alongside and help each of these individuals, but then families raise their families in faith and in the church. And so these are impacts that are going to impact generations. And if you are an RE director or a youth minister, here's the thing. You've got those kids for a very short period of time and they're moving on. And you can't say things like, well, we did this once or we tackled this topic. There's a new crop every couple of years coming on through, and you've got new parents and you've got new children that you need to continue to influence. And so when you're working with young people, it's one of those things that you just have to be consistent. You have to be there. You have to be consistently giving that message, find creative ways to do it, bring as many voices into the conversation as you can, and continue to equip parents. And these are the things that are going to make a generation strong, a generation that will follow after Christ, a generation that will value their faith and build amazing families that will ultimately change our culture. And that's the commandment. That's what Jesus called us to do, to go and make disciples. That's what he told us to do. And all of us need to be about that in whatever capacity leadership or otherwise that he's given us. Maybe his call for you to go and make disciples is just about you and your family. That's a huge call. Do that. Maybe your call, your vocation is to go and make disciples in the broader community. And then you need to do that. But we're all called, Jim, no matter what our vocation is, we are all called to do the Great Commission that Jesus sent. And that is go and make disciples. And all of us need to be doing it every day in all aspects of what we do.
Yes, yeah. Pam Stenzel is with us. The Real Summit in Tampa, Florida, January 29th and 30th, realsummit.net to learn more. You can register there as well. One more segment to go with Pam, so stay tuned. And I remember being in my early 20s when I first received the message of what was proposed in terms of the vision of our Lord, the vision of the church on human sexuality. And it's because I opened up to that section in the catechism once I got my hands on a catechism in the early 20s. Nobody had told me about any of this, but that's the first topic I wanted to go to. What is the truth about human sexuality? What does the church say? When I read it, I was blown away. It was like the words leaping off the page. I always knew this was true. I just never had the words for it. Here it is. It resonated so deeply. This is true. I knew it was true, and I was overjoyed to find it. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The Catholic Current, bringing Christ to the world and the world to Christ.
I think we have to go into prayer knowing that we're being contested for.
Oh, yes. If we didn't have guardian angels guarding us, we would be suckers and losers infallibly to immensely superior forces. The devil's terrified of prayer.
The Catholic Current, 5 p.m. Eastern, from the Station of the Cross and on the iCatholic Radio mobile app.
The Station of the Cross began broadcasting in Buffalo, New York in 1999. Since then, our listening areas have multiplied and expanded into several states. While our mission is to grow the Catholic faith through radio and other media outlets, our apostolate is supportive of but independent from your local diocese. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments.
Hi, Joe McLean here, host of A Catholic Take, heard on the Station of the Cross each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. A bold synthesis of information and inspiration, keeping you up to date on the news and issues that you may have missed from a courageous Catholic perspective. That's A Catholic Take, weekday morning, 7 a.m. right here on the Station of the Cross and the free iCatholic Radio mobile app. Download it today. God love you.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I still listen to it every day. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. I am very grateful for it.
It's just an amazing thing to have, as I am new to Catholicism. Obviously, it's not only helping me, but it's helping so many other people on their walk.
Thank you. God bless you for iCatholic Radio. It has changed my life.
Donate today at thestationofthecross.com.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Pam Stenzel. We're going to get right back to it in a moment. But first, don't forget about iCatholic Mobile for your mobile phone needs. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you do help fund the Station of the Cross. Check out iCatholic Mobile, iCatholicMobile.com. All right, Pam, final stretch here, final segment. So the Real Summit, realsummit.net in Tampa, Florida, January 29th and 30th. Going to be powerful talks, great breakout sessions. Folks can go to realsummit.net, see all the talk titles and summaries, breakout session titles and summaries. A lot of great stuff there. What more can you share with us in the final segment here?
Yeah, well, first I want to tell everyone that's listening that although we're launching this in Tampa Bay, and partly it's because it's where I live and where some of the other leaders that are coming live, and we wanted a central location. We did, get some people from the north, Jim, who just wanted to see the sun for a few days. So that's a really good reason to fly down and spend a couple days in Tampa. But we really have a heart that as God leads and as this is successful, to be able to take this summit into other regions, into other communities, and really impact their own states or their own regions. And so you just reach out to me, you can reach out to the email at realsummit.net, which is colin@enlightencom.com. You'll see that there. And just be on our, get on our list to say, hey, if you come to my area, I would love to be a part if you can't make it to this one. But one of the things I wanted to share, we've been talking so much about church leadership, and that's because that's really my big heart. But I am so excited that God put this for the summit on. He reconnected me is what happened. Jim, I'm going to be really honest with you. Over the last 5, maybe 8 years, certainly since COVID, I have just given up on the public school system, or given up on the world, as we say. And my first reaction, it probably still remains, Jim, don't even send your kids anywhere near that scary system. Circle the wagons, homeschool your kids. I mean, it's a cesspool out there. But for decades, we really felt God's call to impact the public school system. And so back in the 2000s, I was on George Bush's task force where we were promoting abstinence education in the schools and getting federal money from it. I was with a man by the name of Scott Phelps. We were teasing each other recently that we were the teenagers in the group at the time, and now we're the old people. But back during George Bush's administration, we really did some amazing work of getting this important truth, minus the blatant faith piece, but God's truth is truth, whether you put his name on it or not. And we were able to get these important concepts of abstinence until marriage and building healthy families in our public schools. And of course, it's become very, very difficult to do that. When I called Scott up, he said, Pam, I am getting into the schools and training teachers and getting this message into the public schools in the state of Illinois and in the state of Washington. He started naming these blue states. And I'm sitting there going, how are you doing this? And we had the most amazing discussion about how when we take it out of the sex education realm, which is where we're getting into all of these trouble and where we're fighting the culture most, and we just bring it into healthy relationships, healthy families, healthy, self, emotional and physical and even financial health, that we can begin to show students that this works, this not having sex, finishing school, getting married, and then having children. We call that the success sequence. That if you'll do it that way, you will not be living in poverty, and your relationships will be healthy and your families will be stable. And so instead of constantly talking about what we're against, we need to elevate what we're for. We need to show them the beauty of marriage and family. And he's had some success at this. I was so excited. I said, Scott, will you come and share with our people here in Florida the success that you're having in bringing this message into the school systems? And really, Jim, here, I've been working with Suncoast Catholics and in my own diocese here in St. Petersburg. And no matter what the public school, even if you wrote the public school off, why are our Catholic schools not presenting this message clearly? And I know here in my diocese, they're trying to get the Baby Olivia movie program, which is basically teaches fetal development and shows children the beauty of the preborn and gives them a respect for life. We want to get that into our schools, middle school and high school. But we also need to be in our Catholic schools and our Catholic parishes doing this. And, it's one thing to say the public school can't do it. We can't reach those kids. They're gone. But it's another thing to not even be doing it in our faith-based schools and where we should be teaching these truths very clearly from the time our kids are young and right through high school by the time they leave. It is unacceptable when I talk to college students who went to Catholic high school or went to Catholic parish schools, and they absolutely never heard a message about sexual integrity. It is, or pro-life, absolutely unacceptable. And so I really hope that we're going to get a lot of these leaders, both at the church level, at the school level, and then at our pregnancy center level to make a difference.
Absolutely. realsummit.net, realsummit.net. All right, just a few minutes to go. Any final message for us today? Anything else you want to make sure to get out? The floor is yours.
You know, let me tell you, God is doing a work right now in our culture. It is time. And you know what? These windows of opportunity do not stay open forever. And if we are not prepared to walk through some of these open doors that I believe through the Holy Spirit He's given us, that we're going to miss it. We're going to miss it. And we're going to go back and say, I wish I would have in that moment stepped in and done the right thing. We've got a generation right now that is more open to God's truth and to faith and to marriage and family than we have ever seen. And we as leaders need to walk through this door and help them learn. And Jim, I would hope for every 20-year-old young man that they will look at this truth that you saw when you were 20 and just have it jump off the page and challenge them. And then Jim, that young man can build a beautiful family and be an amazing spiritual leader the way what God's done with your life. It's an amazing testimony. So don't we want that for every 20-year-old out there right now that is maybe searching and that they would find the truth of God's plan and God's design and His love for them.
Yeah, and I was in public school all growing up. So yeah, I would have loved if somebody would have found a way into my school and delivered that message. That would have been wonderful. And yeah, of course, there's a lot of people that would have rejected it. Maybe I would have rejected it at the time. I don't know. But I know there would have been some that would have received that message and it would have been absolutely life-changing for them. And so this is what we're talking about. If we can find a way into the schools, then yes, we need to do that. We need to find that way in, and we need to proclaim the truth there in whatever way we can bring it. So yeah, public schools, certainly the Catholic schools, and just so glad to hear about this good work today that Pam Stenzel is sharing with us. Enlighten Communications, again, enlightencom.com. But learn more about the Real Summit coming up later this month, January 29th and 30th, realsummit.net. And Pam, you said at brightcourse.com, people can go and actually, there's video resources there that they can access that they could bring into their own homes.
Yeah, well, you can look and see what it is. It is a paid platform that the pregnancy centers use. So if you don't have it, find the Pregnancy Resource Center in your community, and they will be able to bring those resources to you.
So get your local pregnancy resource center on board with brightcourse.com. And this is going to be a way that they can get the message out. And hopefully you can get access to that as well in your own home for your own children. But yes, we've got to have our eye on the ball here. Absolutely crucial. Thank you so much, Pam Stenzel. You are a great inspiration, and very, very grateful for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, again, realsummit.net. Realsummit.net is where you want to go. And more on Enlighten Communications, enlightencom.com. Brightcourse.com is the other resource we mentioned as well. God bless you all.